beautiful music of the audience returned, even though they're virtual. Thank you all. RobLive, we're back. All right, I know. Where'd you guys go? Right? I know the goal was one episode a week, we know, but life happens. And so it is. Cheryl Chance, Jim's mother, recently passed. Jim, you want to share a few words about Cheryl since we're dedicating this episode to her?
Yeah, she was, you're going to get me there, man.
We're going there. We always go there.
No, we lost her
Wait
on
till you meet Josh.
the 31st, and the family came, and we just said our goodbyes and stuff, but she was a wonderful woman. She did everything for the community she worked for and helped out with, and friends and family had a lot to share about her and stuff, so she'll be really missed.
Well, I want to say that I was there at the funeral. Jim, you did a beautiful job.
Thank you. Thank you.
He gave the word after the pastor, and he kept this really good balance of, who she was, and also trying to share how much he missed about her and loved about her. And my favorite story, and it was right there in the church, was Cheryl liked to play the organ, and Jim said she was known for like, hey, if I feel it, I'm going for it. Because there's emotional spending, right, and there's regular spending.
Yeah, regardless of what my dad would say, yeah. No.
So the pastor pointed out this organ in the corner, and Cheryl says, hey, we need an organ in the church. I'm going to Costco. Dropped the card, got the organ, and she's playing on Sunday.
Just goes for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was her love of music, love of the church, and love of singing. And her other friends stepped up and said, when I first met her, we were rival sopranos in the choir, right? And we became best of friends. What was her name?
Jody Werner, yeah.
So I never got to meet Jim's mom in person, but through that funeral and throughout this past month, I really feel like I got to know her.
No, it was really really special to have everyone there and talk about their stories. And she fell down a lot, I guess. A lot of stories were that she fell, but
you stand up. The pastor's like, would anyone like to share? And so like 3 of the stories in a row were like, well, there's this one time we were outside and she fell, and the next story was her falling somewhere else.
Yeah.
And how she just took it in stride and was like, all right, well, we're moving forward.
I think one of the main messages, I didn't want to just share story after story after story about, that's, lovely too. But
yeah.
I think the main point of what I wanted to talk about, which I kept dwelling on, and we're educators, we want to have a message at the end of the day. And it was, you don't know when your time's up. My neighbor across the street was jogging and physically fit, healthy young man, and passed away at 32. And that's almost just as more painful than losing my mom at 74. Because you just never know when the time is there. So, So take every day as a blessing.
Yeah.
And with that segue, we bring in an amazing story of triumph, of some loss, but mainly faith. I'd like to introduce to the show Josh Cordero. Thanks you for coming in. Let's do the Reach Awkward.
The Reach Awkward. Can we make it work?
Microphone.
There we go.
Josh knows all about microphones and cameras and angles. He's a filmmaker. He's a storyteller. I found out recently, bad on my research, that he's also an author. We'll talk more about this. But I think one of his big roles in life is as a man, your husband, father, believer, fellow believer, by the way. We end up at the same church. So the story of Josh started with me driving back from Sacramento. I'm with, shout out to Sarah, Rachel Salgado, and Jamie Rogers. We were in the car together, principal, vice principal, Sierra Pacific, and we're going through a list of people that we could potentially have on my show. It's a 3-hour drive. And the first name, Rachel's like, Josh Cordero. And I'm like, that sounds familiar. Yeah, she's like, that's Papa Joe's son, right? Is Papa Joe?
Yeah, Papa Joe.
Papa Joe's, he's known throughout our church, Koinonia, which is a large congregation in Hanford, California.
We just made a little mini documentary about him, too, that aired on PBS.
Oh, Papa Joe?
Yeah, it's called Papa Joe and the Redeemed Writers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm watching that. So the other part of that was that you have a company.
Remscape.
And I'm a teacher for the Hanford School District, and I know you do most, if not all, their work on their videos and documentaries, etc. So the beginning of the school year, our superintendent puts a film on about kids being interviewed and how they've been affected by their relationships with their teachers.
Was that the one that was in black and white?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's black and white. It's dramatic. I'm getting, the feels, and I'm like, man, this is really hitting me. The music, the everything, right? And so I go to Dr. Rosa, and I said, hey, who made this? Is this in the house? Who made this video? Because I'm feeling this. And he's like, oh, great local guy, Josh Cordero, with his Remscape. So I look up Remscape, and I start to see all your videos, and I'm like, who is this man? I need to know this guy. You're so talented.
Oh, thank you,
Josh. And I say that when you're not in the room. I was bragging about you beforehand. And so then I find you have an additional story, well, you have many stories and many chapters of your life. And before we start, I just wanted to recognize this thing that we talked about off camera that I first learned going to church. And that is that transparency is the way. Just putting it out there, not worrying about judgment or how you might be viewed or how that view would change. And what I found, the beauty of it is being in a church like Koinonia, you can be transparent and throw the story out there, and it doesn't change people's love for you. And I keep waiting for them to write me off. Hey, I did this, guys.
You're out.
Hey, I got a doozy for you last weekend. And they're like, okay, yeah, well, we're sinners.
Yeah. They're not phased.
Not at all. And it's such a liberating feeling to be there amongst people where you can just kind of be yourself and feel totally accepted.
That's awesome.
So that's where I'm at with Koinonia. And starting with your journey, I want to start from the beginning. I think I heard you telling Jim, you're from Hanford. Originally, Kings County?
Yeah. Born and raised in Hanford, and then raised most of my life in Armona. So, the little city next door, yeah.
Armona.
And I know that town's very, very small. If you pass through a stop sign when you're going through the east-west on the stop sign, you've kind of entered and left the city at that point.
Yes.
So it's very small. But then, lived in Fresno for a little while, and then New Zealand for a little while. It's just kind of part of the story there, yeah. And then after that, I ended up back in Armona. Actually, I'm living in Armona right now, but we're going to be moving to Hanford just next month. So staying in the area.
I love Armona because Armona reminds me a lot of my hometown, which is London. Are you familiar with London? It's between Dinuba and Kingsburg.
No.
Yeah, so it's a small.
Okay.
Well, you guys are. I think you're official city now, right?
No, we're still an unincorporated city. Yeah.
Still. So here's what I associate unincorporated cities: dirt roads and stray dogs. You got to have those two things.
We got a lot of stray cats, for sure.
So Armona is the feeder community for our school, Sierra Pacific. So we get the entire population of Armona from freshman year to senior. So I love those kids. Shout out to the Armona kids. You know who you are. But I wanted to start and jump ahead a little bit. I know you went to high school, graduated. And at what point did you get interested in the filmmaking aspect or storytelling?
Since I was 11. I saw Star Wars and I wanted to make movies. Yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah. I saw the original Star Wars movie and just absolutely loved it and was like, I want to do this one day. So, no, even as a kid, I always wrote stories and, I would write these sci-fi fantasy stories and knew I wanted to make movies one day. And I went about it a little differently. I went to college, but I deliberately went with the intention to study as much as I could about filmmaking and then go make movies because the knowledge wasn't available like it is today. You couldn't go on YouTube and find thousands of videos of how to make a movie and how to be a filmmaker. So I went to Fresno Pacific University and studied filmmaking for 2 years and then dropped out and with the intention, all right, I'm going to go start my business. I'm going to go start making films. And I started really just calling up the people that I knew that I thought could benefit from videography. I wanted to start making videos, even if they were, little promo videos for small businesses or like commercials or even just filming someone's recital or graduation.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get as much experience as I could and just start building connections with like clients and places like that so I could use the locations for their businesses for short films. It always with this agenda. And then my connection too, even with Koinonia, I mean, I was raised in that church, but I pulled, I pulled the executive pastor to the side after college, and I pitched that, hey, I think you guys would benefit from having a videographer on staff. So then while I was building up my business, I was their filmmaker, doing their films and marketing and highlights, of their events or like sermon series videos. Yeah. And what really blasted the door open for us for opportunity, and I didn't anticipate this, was that Koinonia has one of the largest campuses. Like their auditorium is pretty big for this area, right? Yeah. So they get rented out a lot from companies and organizations to host their events. Exactly. And so then a lot of times when they do these events, they would like say, hey, we want to do some content for our event or our presentation. Do you guys have a videographer on staff? And they're like, actually, we do. But when he does things for third parties, he does it through his business. And so Koinonia was actually instrumental in my growth as a filmmaker because they introduced me to a lot of these companies, organizations, nonprofits, schools that I otherwise wouldn't have the means to contact with. So it's interesting how all that lined up. But then, before I knew it, I had full-time and took my business full-time, and we were making short films on the side, and it leads to a whole nother part of the story. But then years after that, tried to implement the endeavor to make our first movie, and then something happened that kind of prevented that from being a reality. But I always wanted to be a filmmaker for most of my life. So, and I still get to do what I love, and that's just tell stories. I love just telling stories, whether they're real ones or ones we make up that are our own. So, but I just love the art of storytelling, I think.
I'm with you on that. Jim, do you remember when you first started to get into storytelling and videography?
It's interesting he said 11 because it was around the same age.
Really?
Around 9, 10.
Was that your original camera back here?
No.
Did you see these old school?
I did, yeah. I love all the retro camcorders back here.
Yeah, but I started just filming family and doing, just filming our own family stuff, which is great because I have my own YouTube channel for our family, and it kind of goes back and stuff.
Document everything.
Yeah, everything.
What's funny is I'm listening to both of you guys talk beforehand off camera, and you speak the same language, right? And so he tries to speak that language with me, and I'm like, well, Jim, what does that mean?
That's gibberish to you.
So for example, you were like, oh yeah, I like your setup here, and Jim's like, yeah, well, we just do this, and then we just do what'd you guys call it, the switch?
The switcher.
Yeah, nobody blinked on that one.
No.
And then the multicam edit. Yeah. Yeah.
And
that was how I got started too. The very first thing I did for someone was my future sister-in-law's wedding. That was the very first thing I actually filmed.
You had a whole production setup for that?
No, I didn't. I borrowed, I think, my father-in-law to be's camcorder because I didn't own one yet. And that was like my little proof video, and then I would show that to other people, like, okay, here's what I can do. So the family opened the door for that. So you do what you can with who you can at first. So
so you do weddings, or used to? Yeah,
we kind of do a little bit of everything. Yeah, I know a lot of filmmakers will have their niche or their area of focus. We could do that, but quite honestly, I think I would just get bored if we did that. So no, we do a little bit of everything, from the live events to weddings to commercials. We've even done some marketing for the Fortune 500 companies too, which is awesome. We do mini documentary stuff that airs on television, social media marketing, training videos, a lot of videos that corporations use internally. So really, you name it. If we can point a camera on it, we probably have done it. So
I've probably seen a lot more of your stuff than I realized because all the training videos for the district. That's probably you, right?
Yeah, or you like the student testimonial video that you shared about watching. Yeah, and I think I really like when we get to do things like that where, again, I like the variety that we get to do because it's the same thing but a different thing too every day.
Yeah.
But I really love when we have productions where we get to tell a story.
Yes.
You don't always get to do that, but whether that's you're hearing someone's story and you get to chronicle it or capture it, or you're formulating the story, you're conjuring it up and you're getting to communicate it. It's just a fun thing to do.
Now you said you had something aired on PBS.
Yeah, recently it was. We actually won a contest. It's with CMAC. They called it the Big Tell, and so you had to kind of pitch your story.
The Big Tell?
Yeah, you had to pitch.
I was on the.
Were you? You were on it?
Well, I have a library project where I created a library in my hometown, and so the Big Tell sent a filmmaker, videographer to do my documentary, a 5-minute one.
Oh yeah.
Johnny Soto.
Okay.
Out of Fresno, and then they did they do the the film festival at the end, right? At
Got
the
it.
theater?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know that. I got to see that with me. But yeah, you had to how it works is you pitch a story, and on the strength of the story, and does it meet kind of the community standards of what they're wanting to accomplish, through the storytelling, the whole project, the big tell. So they go off that. So I pitched my father and kind of his story. He has a very interesting, inspirational story that starts with some tragedy, but then just goes into a life transforming experience, and then launches into this nonprofit and this ministry that he's implemented called Redeemed Brides. And the two things were connected. So I've always just wanted to kind of tell his story. And so that was that film. And yeah, I got to air on PBS. They had the premiere of it.
That
and
is so
we
cool.
It's on our social media pages right now. But
Did you by
that was
chance
fun.
work with Jeff Aiello or any of the Aiello brothers?
I don't know. No, I
Okay.
did not.
Yeah, they were at PBS for a while. I used to work with
Okay.
them. They're phenomenal.
Okay, no, yeah, we even went to PBS and where they do like an interview with you about the film, but no, I don't remember crossing paths with them. But yeah, but that was a fun experience, and it's a great film too. Yeah, and it's on our YouTube page too, Papa Joe and the Redeemed Riders. It's,
Oh, no, we're gonna put
I'm
that
very,
link
very
on.
proud of it. Yeah, you guys should totally watch it. It's a good.
We're
film.
gonna share all your stuff. I love your stuff. Now,
Thank you.
here's where I kind of lean in and go, "What? The spooky stuff."
Uh-huh.
I remember Phobos.
Yeah,
I watched the. Wait, is that out?
it's out. Yeah, I think it's in. You can watch it one of two ways on our YouTube channel. It's where we put probably most of our original content, so to speak. There's a version of it where you can see it like in 6 different parts. And I want to say there's a version of it where you can watch it in its entirety. It's about an hour-long film.
I haven't watched the pranks, the bloopers.
The bloopers, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
So-
we pranked the cast.
Audience, check this out. Especially if you're from the Central Valley, Kings County. Phobos was filmed entirely in Kings County with local talent. If you've been to Hanford, you're like, oh, I know that building. I've been in there. So it's kind of cool in that sense. And it seems pretty creepy from what I've seen so far. But your latest project is The Pool.
The Pool, yeah. That was, now I had, we made a lot of short films. Then I had a tragedy in my life. My first wife died. And that was that was 6 weeks after our son was born. So all that to say is I kind of hit pause on doing anything creative.
Oh, yeah.
Like any short films after that. And then even I reopened my business. I was closed for like a year and kind of thought doing the creative stuff was over, with that. Like I had to be a dad and a provider and be an adult. So there was almost 10 years between making Phobos and The Pool. So it took that long to do another short film. So The Pool was very exciting and precious to me because I felt like in some ways returning home, so to speak,
Yeah.
getting to do what I loved, in that I wrote the story and got to direct it and, cast local talent and shoot it in Kings County. But yeah, The Pool was inspired really just by a childhood fear. I had seen Jaws, which remains one of my top 5 films of all time.
Yeah.
The original Jaws, the Steven Spielberg film. And I always, even as a child, I've seen it again. I saw this like way too young than it was appropriate. And I'd be afraid to
with
get in
you.
our swimming pool.
Yeah.
I would be totally afraid. I was afraid that there was there was something underneath me that I couldn't see that was gonna eat me, that was gonna bite me. And Jaws was like a terrifying, because I mean, for spoiler for those who haven't seen it, it's decades old. The film's older than I am, but that a child dies in that film, right?
Yes.
And I think that
I'd
film
never
was
seen that
so
before that.
jarring to me because I thought that children were off limits to things
They
like
were
that.
until Jaws.
And then that we're vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was scary. And but I always it really was this water. It remains like kind of a phobia of mine. Like I don't swim in the ocean or lakes because if I can't see what's under me, I don't trust it.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us around that time, Jim, I don't know if you can agree with this, but you'd get into any body of water after watching that.
Mm-hmm.
And dun-dun,
Yeah. You can't help
the
but
music
think
starts
that.
going. You're like, right?
Right. Yeah. The Pool originated from that concept.
Oh, wow.
And to keep it a little ambiguous for anyone who hasn't watched it, but yeah, it's essentially it starts with a young boy who gets in this pool to a house his family moves into, and it has the ability to conjure what he imagines.
Wow.
And he's someone who's very fascinated by sharks, and in the beginning he has a book with all these photographs of sharks, and his mother's kind of like saying, "Come swimming with me, sweetie," and when he does, something bad happens.
All right, we're gonna watch The Pool for sure.
Isn't there something that's similar to The Pool out right now? It's coming out.
Yeah, there was.
Night
Yeah,
Swim.
actually, when we were
Night
editing the pool, Night Swim came out, and I was like a little nervous. So I was like, "Oh no,
It's
this
almost-
almost." But I didn't see that movie, but I actually went ahead and read the Wikipedia little summary because I was curious, was it similar? And it's not. That has to do with like a curse, and there's some
Fountain.
like demonic entity, and some fountain that like the water of it goes into their pool somehow. So. While
I like
maybe
the-
visually there could be some similarities,
I
yeah,
like the
story-wise it's
concept
different.
that the kid conjures up, like imagines, and then
It's
something's
always
in
right.
the water. Yeah.
That's always the worst. That's why I thought Paranormal Activity was pretty cool because they never show whatever that entity is, right? It's whatever your brain conjures up, which is always far worse than, So
Oh, yeah.
this kid in the pool, I'm sure he's got some
Yep.
right crazy.
Yep.
I want to take a step back.
Sure.
2005. You're a Fresno Pacific University Sunbird, and you're in the theater hall. You meet someone,
Oh, yes, my first wife, Allison.
Allison.
Yeah, we actually met in a school play there. It was the first time she had ever been in a play her entire life, she told me. So
you're in front of the camera as well sometimes.
sometimes.
'Cause I
Yeah,
saw
more,
some voice acting going on.
yeah, more often than not, I do voice work, I would say, nowadays, rather than being in front of the camera. I prefer being behind it.
Was that Sean Connery that I was listening to when you guys were waiting to get called in for the ultrasound?
Oh.
Who was that? That was a great voice.
The voice. Oh, I want to say, okay, I did not, and again, not knowing exactly what vlog I think I have an idea of talking about. I think that was my Bane impression from The
okay.
Dark Knight Rises.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
The perhaps
That
that
was good. I said, okay.
jumping out of a plane. I like doing voices.
That was good.
But thank you. But yeah, I met Allison in a school play, The Importance of Being Earnest, at Fresno Pacific. She actually just accompanied a friend to an audition because the friend was nervous. She didn't even intend to be in it. The friend didn't get the role, but she did. Ironically, she just auditioned just to like make her like, look, well, I'll audition. See, like if I can do it, you can do it. And then she got the part.
You know what I think that is? Here's my theory behind that. The whole going with the friend to an audition. There's no pressure and you're relaxed because you didn't really intend to be there in the first place. Whereas your friends built it up and they're tense and they really want it. And there's the whole mind game, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like athletics. If you're relaxed, you tend to do better. And so she's like, oh, no pressure. If I get it, I get it, whatever. Yeah, we're just read some lines. And there it is.
Yeah.
Because I've heard that story multiple times
Have
from
you?
different individuals, especially like big, is it Ashton Kutcher? There's a pretty big name out there who accompanied a friend.
And
was
that's
like,
how their career started. Huh?
Yeah, and the casting agent, like, why don't you come up here and stand up here? But that's, okay, so you guys meet then.
Yeah, we
That
met through the
blossoms.
play, and yeah, they've been the first night the cast had a meet and greet. I asked her out that same night to go, just to go out with me, and we hit it off, and began a relationship pretty quickly, and in 2007 we got married. Yeah, and then so I started my business, excuse me, and she became a teacher. She taught pre-K for 5 years
okay.
before then deciding she was ready for a change herself, and then she worked with our business for a few years too. So then we worked together as filmmakers. So that was fun.
Right. Then, from what I understand, you being a Christian throughout your whole life, right? Constantly praying, having conversations with the Lord. At some point, you feel a calling that says, we're going to New Zealand.
Yeah. So, do you want me to share that story?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, shortly before that, we kind of had what I would call a radical kind of like spiritual transformation. And that to me kind of touches on the aspect of salvation versus surrender. The people who, and there's lots of them who I think will, ask Jesus into their heart, will be saved. But they're like, but this area of my life is off limits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They won't give this to God. This
Totally
is still
relate.
mine.
Totally relate to that.
Yeah, and to me that's surrender. So, and something happened in 2014. We were at a Christian conference, and something happened that just totally just like rocked us, where we both stepped into the act of, I'd say, surrender. And that was probably the first time I was even being a Christian my whole life. That point being in probably my late 20s, that I first really surrendered my life to God. And then I tell people, once you really start doing that, the weird and even the supernatural start happening. Like if you really are serious, when you tell God, take advantage of my availability in my life, He will. He will. And so not that long after that happened, the story of what happened with that was it was May 19th. And my mother gives me this decorative cross, and it has Joshua 1:9 printed on it, right? Which says, be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And she's never done anything like this, but my mother tells me, hey, I feel like God put on my heart to tell you that the numbers 1 and 9 are going to be really important to you soon, and just be ready for that. And I'm looking at, it's May 19th, and I'm looking at the cross that says Joshua 1:9. I think, is that because it's the 19th and the verse has 1:9 in it? I think it's a little silly. And she goes, I don't know why, but she just says with sincerity, she believes like the Lord wanted her to tell me that. And so I'm sharing it with you. I'm being obedient to that. Okay, well, thanks, Mom. And then so I go to bed that night and I wake up and I have just this burning sensation, just like I got to read my Bible. Like something's drawing me to it, right? So I grab my physical Bibles on a nightstand next to me. I grab it and I open it up. And I just happen to randomly open up. The first thing I open up to is the book of Joshua. And I'm in the part of that book where essentially it's like the Israelites are kind of finished with conquering the promised land, so to speak. Yeah. And they're calling dibs on who gets what. And the part I just happen to open up to is where Joshua is saying what he wants. And he wants a place called Timnath-Serah. And that, as soon as I read it, that just stood out to me, Timnath-Serah. And I was curious what it meant. Was it a Hebrew word? And so I grabbed my phone, and I was going to just search what does Timnath-Serah mean. Yeah. And in a way that I've experienced, never before or after that, I wouldn't necessarily say it was an audible voice, but I felt a voice tell me, map it. Just said 2 words, map it. And so, without questioning it, I opened up my map app, and I typed in the words Timnath-Serah. And one location on the planet showed up, and it was in New Zealand. And then just as clearly, I felt this voice say, go there. Now, I'm thinking this is God talking to me, but I'm also really confused in the aftermath of it. This just all seems so strange and surreal. I'm questioning the validity of it. Was this a dream? And then I look over at the portion of Scripture that I had just read out of, and for the very first time, I realized what I was reading out of was Joshua chapter 19. 1:9 is what I had just opened up to. And I had only just now realized that. So I woke up my wife and I told her, I think God wants me to go to New Zealand. And without any idea why I was going, I bought a ticket just for myself for 1 week to go to that place in New Zealand. I had never been there before, to go see why was God telling me to go and just to be obedient to what he told me to do. And I go there, and the short version of it is 2 things happened. The first thing I did before I went was I contacted a church that was the closest church to that location. Yeah. And I kind of told them in an email just who I was and why I was coming. I found out later they thought I was nuts and I wasn't going to show up. But the church ended up being the second largest church in the whole country. And when I showed up, they were, this secretary gal goes, oh, you're the American. You're here. And she was really surprised to see me.
But they knew you.
And she goes, well, you came all this way. We got to have someone show you around. It was a huge campus. And the first person that she grabbed was a man named Terry, who would later kind of communicate to me. He had no idea why he was where he was because he doesn't work in this building. It's on the other side of the campus. And so in hindsight, he was like, I don't know why I was even there that day. But he's the first person she sees that's on staff. She grabs him and just says, Josh is an American. He's from California. He's here because he had this experience with God. And I talked to Terry, and it turns out Terry is the producer of a television show that they produce at the church. What? And he's the son of the lead pastor. They're the ones who started this church too. And they had been looking at these major motion pictures that American churches had been making. And most of them were pretty bad at that point, but they certainly had a level of impact, right? And they were getting better. And they looked at that and they were like, well, we could do that. We have the resources, we have the team, the equipment to do something like that. We should look into doing that. And they had literally just that morning, is my understanding, that morning, like the day before, had tasked Terry, begin developing what might be our first major motion picture. And I showed up that same day at the church saying, I'm a filmmaker from America and God told me to come here. What's up? So that was how we met and began kind of collaborating on that endeavor. And then that was cool. And then we physically went to the exact location where the GPS showed up. It was so bizarre because there's no street signs, nothing to indicate Timnath-Serah anywhere. The name's nowhere to be seen. And I came all this way, right? I knocked on the door of everyone around that area and was mentioned Timnath-Serah. No one had heard of it.
Okay, so when you knock on the door, what's your spiel?
Oh, I actually just said I'm a filmmaker from California, and just that I'm here to. How did I word it? Gosh. I just said who I was, and that I'm looking for like a Tim Nothsah location. Like, do you know where that is? That was it. I didn't give them.
Were they
the spiel.
receptive?
Well, they were all polite. I mean, because I was just someone acting like I was looking for where to go, and I essentially was, because Tim Nothsah just said it was on this tiny, not exactly an alley, but it was the street between these larger houses and in just a residential area is where it landed. So, but none of them had heard of what Tim Nothsah was. Yeah. But what was interesting was if you went to the exact spot the GPS was telling me where it was, two things were visible. One, behind me was a house for sale. And the other thing that was right in front of me was a house that had a huge American flag in the window. And I went to that spot with Terry, and he kind of was chuckling because he was like, he's never seen an American flag in New Zealand ever. He was born and raised in that country. And I remember pausing and just taking it in and thinking, I told him out loud, I go, I wonder if God wants me to move to New Zealand. This is some weird, clever way of him doing it. And then like even after we were there, my wife texts me and she goes, hey, have you looked up Tim Nothsah again? She goes, I don't know why, but like all of a sudden now 2 locations pop up. And it's in New Zealand. It's a few miles from where you're at. And I go, what? So I go down there, and then what I find is it's another house for sale. Yeah, it's another house for sale. And then even weirder is that right next to, attached to the land was like this pin with all these lambs. And what's interesting about that is my last name's Cordero. You know what that means?
No.
It's Spanish for lamb.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I should know that.
So it was like, is God getting creative here? Is he? And then almost a year to the day, we relocated. Yeah, wow. Man, my wife and I to go live in New Zealand. Yeah, so.
Okay, so when you go back home and you explain this to friends and family, what was their reaction? Like, hey, we're going to New Zealand.
I think awe, just like in shock. But when they heard the story, they were like, how could you deny that that's not some supernatural thing with God's fingerprints all over it? You know,
with
the 1-9 thing, and just in who you met and what they were trying to do. That it's your exact same career. That's what you've been wanting to do. Because we hadn't made that big movie yet. It was like, there was like shock, but just I think amazement that, oh, wow, like the supernatural still happens today. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of people were just like, oh, that's a God thing. Oh my gosh. You know,
you
so
have
there
a very
was
understanding wife then.
Jim's like, how would that play out for me?
My wife would have been like, well, you're go ahead.
Well, my Allison, she actually was the one who I think even before I was like, I think God's using this experience to relocate us there. She was the one who was probably even more like this is God.
Let's go.
How do we not listen to this? You know what I mean? How do we not obey this? So, but almost a year to the day, literally, we moved to New Zealand. Was it
to one of those for sale homes?
No, actually, it was it was a little apartment that was attached to Terry's house. This is where we ended up moving.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it ended up becoming available when we.
Yeah, you and Terry were like, okay. So my brief experience with New Zealand, and I was going to mention this to you. And Jim, I don't know how much you know about the culture there, but you know how like the Aboriginal people of Australia, right? That's like the native to Australia. Well, I didn't know this, but we got to New Zealand because I was there, teacher trips, and you go with the students and you get it free. So we were in Australia, then we went to New Zealand, and we get there, and we are greeted at the airport with some pretty intimidating guys.
The Maori?
They've got tattoos on their faces, right? And I'm like, okay, so how does this work? And now all these tongues are being extended out as far as possible, right? And this is part of their culture. And I'm like, okay, well, what happens next? And then our lead teacher goes up with one of them, and they touch nose to nose. And I'm like, okay, there's a whole culture here that I need to learn about. And at the time, I had longer, curly. Do you remember my long-haired, curly hair? Very Maori-looking.
Did you?
So
you fit in.
Not knowing, then they're all hitting me up. Like, hey, where are you from?
Are you one of us?
Yeah. And I was like, no, I didn't know you guys existed, but this is cool. To this day, of all the places we went to, including some places in Europe, whatever, New Zealand, to me, was the most friendly, open, even environmentally looking at. I remember being there for soccer practice. They had a soccer tournament going on, and I think I experienced the wind, the rain, the sun.
Yeah. That's the ongoing
in 1 hour.
There. That's an ongoing joke there that they experience all 4 seasons every day.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I remember that we were there, and they had some paramedics, because you have a bunch of soccer teams playing, so I got paramedics, ambulance driver, and he's like, hey, have you looked around? I said, no. He's like, let me take you to the mall. He drives me to the mall. He just met me 5 minutes ago. He's taking me to the mall, and he's talking about his favorite artist, Chefu, Chefu, soulful Maori R&B singer. And so I'm at the mall, and we're buying a Chefu CD with this ambulance driver that I met 5 minutes ago. And I'm like, are all people like this?
They're very friendly
and consistent throughout. People were taking me to their house to eat. And
very trusting and hospitable. Yeah.
It was a different world, and I loved it. I could easily see how you would want to live there.
Absolutely.
So you're in New Zealand, and then what happens?
Yeah, after we moved there, we were getting settled in, and with the intention, and that whole process was really complicated and messy because Allison became pregnant in the middle, which was quite a surprise. But in the middle of our relocating there, and she couldn't fly at a certain point in her pregnancy. So we moved there. What we felt like, we felt like God was putting our hearts to move at a certain time. But there was a lot of almost risk associated with that because our visas weren't completed. We were going to be able to actually go there because we brought a skill set that was considered desirable in that country. So we were going to, after we finished this immigration process, we were going to have the same legal rights as citizens through it. But we hadn't finished it. And if we waited till we finished it, well, she might be at a point where she can't actually travel because of the pregnancy. Yeah. But if we also don't finish this stuff in a timely manner, we could get deported. Wow. So it was a very stressful kind of time getting settled in as we got all these things wrapped up. And one of the things to complete this immigration process again for us to be to receive these rights involved a complete medical screening. And the reason for that is I from what I was told was that since New Zealand's healthcare system is a public one, they literally want to make sure you're not coming there just to get free healthcare. So we're going through that. Yeah. I go through it, and I'm in the clear. And then we're getting settled into our apartment. We get a call that Allison had some abnormal results in her blood test, and that we need to come in right away. And that evening, it's dark at this point, and we're like, what doctor calls them back in? At this, and we're getting a little nervous too. But we go over there, and
now this is happening in New Zealand.
At this point, we're in New Zealand. We're living in New Zealand. We've sold everything. We've relocated. Allison's pregnant, and we just got even furnished the apartment. We've been there for a little while at this point, and we're kind of just now getting ready to just settle in for a little bit, right? As the last immigration things get finalized. And we go to this doctor though, and he won't really tell us what it means, but he's telling us that he's this is dangerously low. This is dangerously low. You basically need to go to a hospital, Allison, like right now.
That night.
But we don't understand what this all means. And we call the woman who was essentially kind of overseeing the pregnancy. It was a friend that we made in New Zealand named Stephanie, and she without even again knowing what is this, could this mean? She says, when she sees what these blood results revealed, Allie, you need to go to the hospital right now. And she feels fine. And so we're a little scared. We don't understand what's going on. This is a hospital that's so overcrowded too. And we're not being treated the best too when we get there. It's the Americans who weren't supposed to show up the way we did. And I'm getting super defensive of my wife too. But long story short, we end up then finally being seen after spending almost the whole night there, waiting to be seen. And we find out that she has leukemia. She has leukemia, an advanced stage of leukemia. So the stages there's 4 stages, correct? Is that how it works? Yeah, I think so. She was at a point where 98% of her cells were infected with leukemia, essentially. And she had 0 symptoms.
Oh, see that I was going to ask,
which really caught everyone off guard. Why doesn't she have this? I mean, they were even saying she should have been bleeding from her gums. Was one of the symptoms. And all she had was just some fatigue, which we associated with pregnancy. She's pregnant. Yeah. And what was interesting about all that, there's so many things in hindsight I saw that I felt like God was connecting. But had we not gone to New Zealand and done this immigration process that required that blood test, a specialist in San Francisco told us later that Allison would have died in her sleep in her 3rd trimester. We never would have known anything was wrong. Wow. And both her and baby would have died. So this going to New Zealand caught that. And then before we began the fight of her life, we got to spend weeks in New Zealand together. So, and with no other responsibilities or obligations, right? We've moved. We haven't started jobs yet. Yeah. There's just each other. So I'm glad we had that season. But yeah, we found that disease, but we had to return to the U.S. because now she's a sick immigrant and they don't really treat them.
Wow.
I mean, they would, but you'd have to pay 100% of it out of pocket.
I thought it was.
Well, but it's public for citizens, not immigrants.
Oh, got it.
And what was interesting too is when we moved and we canceled everything, all the different cell phone utilities. The one thing we didn't cancel because Allison suddenly felt like one day, I don't feel like we're supposed to cancel this, was our health insurance, which now we could use going back to the U.S. because that's where we needed to go to get treatment.
Yes.
So we went to Stanford and she began treatment, but a treatment that was meant to be just to try to prevent the disease from deteriorating further, because where she was at was in this very challenging place where, because she was 5 months pregnant, the treatment for what she had would destroy the fetus. The fetus wouldn't survive it. So as she goes to Stanford, she's presented by this ensemble team of specialists that say, like, the most realistic thing for you to do is to get an abortion so you can start getting the treatment you need, because the baby's not going to survive it anyway. Oh. And this is her first baby. And she suddenly is like, nope, that's not going to happen.
Not a hesitation, just...
She said, I'm his mother, and it's my job to protect him. And I remember this specialist sitting by her with all of just, with care and just concern and trying to protect her patient. She sits down by her, she puts her hand on her leg, and she goes, Allison, I just need you to understand, if you do this, this could be your demise. I mean, she says it just like that. And she goes, I understand.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she essentially postponed the treatment she needed to give our son, Judah, the time to develop and to grow and to get to a point where his life would essentially be viable. So she got to 30 weeks, and then the disease kept deteriorating. And the team said, if you wait any longer, like he should be okay at this point, and if we induce labor. But if you wait any longer, you're just endangering both your lives. And so we got to 30 weeks, and on August 1st, he was born. And then they started giving her more aggressive treatment to try to fight the disease. And ironically, weeks after that, it worked. The disease was eradicated. And next she would do like a bone marrow transplant, and she actually had a perfect genetic match for a bone marrow transplant with one of her sisters, which I was told was very rare, even with siblings. So everything was looking up. And then all of a sudden she started having organ failure, just between the disease, the treatment, the pregnancy, even the birth. Everything was just too much for her 29-year-old body to take. And she died. She died 6 weeks after our son was born. On September 15th.
Now, the rest of us sort of got to be a part of this journey because of your transparency and willingness to share what was going on as it was happening in real time. How was that decision made, and how do you
we just made vlogs, just with a cell phone, so I didn't have any of my gear with me at that point. So part of it was to pass the time and something to do. Part of it was to, because I lived in the hospital with her, because you got to think too, I'm homeless at this point.
Yes.
Because we moved from New Zealand. So I lived in the hospital room with her, for months, and I didn't have a job right now because we closed our business in California and we never started doing anything in New Zealand. So it was just each other. So part of it was just something to do, even though we stayed pretty busy with all the things we had to do with her health and our baby's health. But part of it was to just keep people updated without having to answer the same questions over and over again. And then just to, I think, very transparently filling people in. I think one of the best ways you can do that is not just tell people, but show people, right? So that was kind of it. And I think it was also just chronicling the season we were in. Because I think with how we felt God led us to New Zealand, how even the awareness, finding out about the disease the way we did, we had every confidence that they both would make it. So I think we wanted to chronicle what God was doing in our lives, because we wanted to share it with others. Of just that He was faithful, that He was a loving God, and we wanted to just chronicle the journey. So we made a series of different vlogs, just going through the different stages of that.
It was called the healing process.
It's called the Journey of Healing.
Journey of
Healing. That's what we called it. It's just a playlist of the videos. It's on our Remscape YouTube channel right now.
I watched those, and I learned a new term. I think it's actually right here on the cover of your book, ridiculous hope.
Yeah.
Not regular hope.
Ridiculous
hope. And I have to say, as I'm watching this play out, and I'm seeing you guys receive, setback after setback, I'm witnessing ridiculous hope. Yourself and I kind of felt like I got to meet Allison through this, and she's like, well, guys, it's not the news we wanted, but we're going forward. We're moving forward, and this is crazy, Josh, in terms of we talk about coincidence or I don't even use that word anymore, but about a month ago, I came across, Jim, I don't know if you remember this on social media because I post a lot. I came across this Rocky quote, right? And I posted it.
I think I quoted Rocky in one of our vlogs.
No, it's the exact.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And basically the quote is from it's the first or second movie, and he's talking about how
getting knocked down.
Yeah, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about being able to get back up, and that the world is not
sunshine and rainbows.
Do you remember the quote exactly?
No, I don't. But there's that it'll beat you down like every chance it'll get, and it's not even about like how hard you hit, but how hard like when you get hit, how what can you take
and get
what can you get back up from?
And that was so fitting that you shared that quote, because as I'm watching this vlog and as I'm learning about your story, you guys just keep getting up. And I think the beauty of that is people start to ask questions like, what are these two on that is making them continually get back up in the face of adversity where most would just throw in the towel? And it forces people to recognize that there is, ridiculous hope. And where does that come from?
Yeah, exactly. Where does it come from? And I remember the staff even sharing that with us, that Allison's kind of resilience was noteworthy. That it stood out to them. And they kind of confided with us too, that they'd seen with other patients there that just the thing that almost kills so many patients is they give up hope. You see that they're done fighting. The mental aspect of it, they just think, or even they're just, I'm done fighting. You know what I mean? And just as I'm over this. This is the end, and let's get it over with. You know what I mean? And her fortitude was exemplary. With how she kept fighting.
Oh yeah, and Jim, I got to show you these videos. I know you haven't had a chance to see them, but it kind of goes back to this idea that was shared with me once. It was like, well, what is it to be a Christian? And I said, well, part of it is to go out and share the good word, right? And I think about how we share that good word, and I know that there are certain religions where you get a knock early in the morning. Hey, how are you doing? I want to talk to you about Jesus Christ, right? and for a lot of people, I can see Jim's face right now. I'm sorry, I'm going to bed. I love you, right? You go back, and it says, so how do we do this in a way where people are more receptive? And I remember a friend telling me once, he says, if you live a certain way, people get curious about how you're living.
Sure.
Because we're all getting punched by life on a regular basis. But Josh and Allison are getting up. What is making them? See, now I'm asking questions. And now you're not having to come to my doorstep. I just want to know why you keep getting up. And now you share the word.
Well, that's even what Jesus did to a certain extent, right? With just the miracles, he's healing people. You'll see a lot of times he shows up to areas in the Bible and he's not necessarily ministering. He's just serving people, sometimes miraculously so. And that's what then prompts an interest in him. What are you about? And even when he shares his parables, right? It's a lot of people, we like to mention them a lot when we talk about his ministry, but he almost never really ministers in regards to a parable until someone asks him, what does this mean?
Perfect.
You know what I mean? It's like there's their curiosity, there's the intrigue that's sort of planted. Like, well, who is this man to do these miracles? There should be something about Christians that makes us stand out from the rest. And if there's not, I would say we're probably doing something wrong. But we should be distinguished from the rest of the world. Yeah. To make them see, like, well, okay, what do you have that I don't? I want it.
Exactly. And that's what I see. And so you shared your story after. At what point did you go, I'm going to put this? Well,
Allison started writing that.
Actually. Oh, so she started this.
She started
and you
it.
Finished it.
Yeah, she felt like God kind of had prompted her to start writing it, just to share kind of our testimony and the journey we'd been on. And she died before she could finish it, and I just wanted to finish it and dedicate it to her. So I took she mostly notes and outlines, and so but I kind of took all that. We both were avid journalers too.
Yes.
And so between the videos we made and the pages and pages of journals, I would just literally like have my journal open, her journal open. I would kind of go page by page. I would like look at our social media feed from years ago, and I would look at the videos we made, and I would take notes, building kind of like the blocks. Okay, I should share this, and I should share this. And then I would write that part out, and then I would repeat, then go to the next few pages of our journals.
So that's how, okay.
And that's how that book got written.
So
Yeah.
you guys, Surrendering All, a story, true story of reckless love and ridiculous hope.
Mhm.
You can find this on Amazon. Hopefully we can find it locally, and I think it should be Hanford somewhere where we can get this thing.
I know it is.
111
I'm not
Cafe.
sure where right now.
Come on, let's put this on the shelf. Let's get this sold.
I know they had it there for a while and they were selling out, so maybe they need more copies. So.
More copies, guys, because RobLive needed a copy yesterday to kind of do a little bit more research. I have one now. I'm going to read this as soon as I get home. Thank you for that. So what most people are probably wondering right now in terms of our audience is like, okay, so your wife has passed.
Mhm.
You've got the book. Where's Judah?
Judah, yeah. Actually, you know what? I got to share this with you too, because this is pretty wild. I told you about that encounter right before New Zealand, where we had that encounter that set us in motion to surrender our lives to God, right?
Yes.
When we're at this same event, I feel like during the time of worship, I feel like God tells me we're going to have a son. And I'm supposed to name him Judah Aslan. So I didn't actually name our son. God did. And so Allison and I were always very curious what names meant. So I share this with my wife, and she's like, oh, wow. And so we right away started like, okay, what does Judah mean? Judah is a verb. It means to worship. Aslan, to worship. Aslan is Turkish for lion.
Oh, like the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah, Chronicles of Narnia. Yeah,
Aslan.
yeah. C.S. Lewis named a lion, essentially, but just in a different language. And then Cordero, our last name, is Spanish for lamb. So Judah's name's a statement. It means worship the lion and the lamb, which is a very common phrase used in Scripture to refer to the lamb being a representation of Jesus and the lion representing Father God.
Wow.
So, and he loves actually to worship. And actually, Allison was an avid worshiper too, and she would dance a lot when she would worship, and he likes dancing too. So it's pretty interesting how that's all lined up.
I'm so glad that you brought up the dancing, and here's why. And Jim, I don't know, because I know we went to your church on your mom's church on Sunday, and there was a lot of celebration and singing, and this is beautiful. We didn't talk about this yet. He knows what I'm going to say. Some ladies stood up, you know, because they were singing Amazing Grace and a couple other ones, and there was kind of an upbeat hymn, and there was a book, and they brought out the tambourines. And like,
Yeah. Yeah, dancing happens a
It does.
lot, and especially in the Old Testament. It happens a lot in the Bible when people are worshiping. And I know we kind of like, dance at church. That's inappropriate or weird, but it was a very common thing to do. in
So that's the
worship
thing.
gatherings.
I want to get past these rules because for whatever reason I grew up, it's like you kind of sit and you're quiet and you worship, you know, and it's a very private thing. And then I get the koinonia and churches like koinonia, and I see a celebration and I see a freedom. And I'm going to shout out two people right now that you know, Pastor Candace and Tyler. And this is about 2 months ago. We're at church, and it's worship time. They're singing, and it's a pretty upbeat song. And those two are in the front row dancing like nobody's watching.
Yeah, they do.
It's so inspiring to
Yeah.
me. And I find myself, you know, to be a pretty open, relaxed individual. Not a whole lot of self-consciousness going on, but I'm not there yet. And I didn't envy it. I admired it. And I was like, I want to get to that point where I am dancing in the front like nobody's watching.
Yeah.
And it's like a concert.
Yeah,
Because if you
do
think
it.
about it, if we're at a Raiders game, right? We both are Oakland
Yeah.
Raiders fans. I know, woo, yeah. When we go to, we're like, we've got the face paint, and right? And then we get to church, and our Savior, and we're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, very reserved.
No.
And you know what? I mean,
let's
the Bible,
shout for him.
Yeah, the Bible talks about that children love to hang out with Jesus, right? And I always pictured, man, I mean, who do kids like to hang out with? They don't hang out with solemn, quiet people.
No.
The people who are silly, who are a little loud, who are goofy,
yes.
who have fun. So I've always, Christianity should be fun, and we should be able to let our hair down and not be, stuck up, reserved,
Yeah.
But dance and smile and laugh and have fun.
So when I saw the tambourine at the funeral, I was like, all right, here we go. Right. I love that. So the journey doesn't end there.
Yeah, so I mean, Judah's 8 years old today, and he's doing well. He's healthy.
I'm looking at
He's here today.
Spoiler alert! I'm looking at Judah right now. He's enjoying. Jim has a whole arcade set up over here.
It's awesome. This retro arcade area.
And I was so glad when you had Josh messaged me yesterday. So I said, "Hey, you mind if Judah comes?"
Yeah,
I'm
so
like,
I could bring him
I
along.
want to meet Judah's like, he's such a big part of the story.
Yeah.
How much of the story does he understand and grasp?
I mean, there are certain
As an
things I
8-year-old.
think, certain things he hasn't quite wrapped his head around, with the journey. And I mean, one day I'm sure he will, and we'll walk through that and talk through that. But I mean, he knows who Allison was, and that she's his birth mom, and we got pictures of her in the house. He watches some of the videos that we made.
Yeah.
When he was in the NICU, even Allison made an audio recording of her voice reading some children's stories, and she would play that. So when she had to go get her treatment, or if she was having bad days, like there'd be something where he could still hear her voice. So he today even has that recording, and we keep the books that she read in case he wants to have like a story time with mommy kind of thing. And so he knows who she is. He knows who his birth mom is, and she's a part of his life in a way.
So you go through this healing process, and then at some point we meet Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about that whole healing process.
So I mean I would actually say when I started dating, it was funny. I felt like God told me not to. But I was just so lonely and felt like I needed to be in a romantic relationship again. But I felt like he told me not to until this was done.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen to that, and made some mistakes along the way. But then when I kind of got back on track and was focusing on the book, when it got done, the second draft was done. So I just kind of needed a lot of just grammatical stuff to be over. And that was stuff that I was releasing to someone else to handle at that point. But I remember I was just thinking, okay, I'm ready just to pursue getting remarried. I want to be in a relationship. I want my son to have a mom in his life, and it was very just important to me. So I actually jumped on EHarmony, and I signed up for an account, and I was matched with a woman named Sarah within 24 hours. And the funny thing too is that I found out later that she was on there for a year and hated it, had a miserable experience, on a few dates, and did not like any of the guys, and had tried to cancel her account, and couldn't. There was some hoops she had to jump through with customer service, and it was just so much hassle. And she was like, okay, forget it. It expires in I think a week or two longer. I'll just wait it out. Fine. And then that's when I messaged her.
That last week before cancellation.
And
do you remember the initial message? Or?
Well, it just caught my eye. I remember just that she looked beautiful in her profile photo, but that her she was so upfront about her faith, even in her little bio. It was just she opened with that. And I like that. And I thought it was interesting that she lived in Redding. Now, Redding, California, which is about 6 hours north of here, was the place where I had that supernatural encounter that led me to that path of surrender. It was at Bethel Church in Redding. Okay. And so I thought it was interesting that she was from there. And then coincidentally, in regards to the book, I had to go to Redding in just a few days because the artwork was made by a painter that I know, and she had just finished the paintings.
Oh, the cover?
Yeah, the cover and the back artwork too. Was painted by a woman named Nicola Hill, and I had to go up to see her.
Oh, the lion! There's a lion.
Yeah, she painted both of those. I had to go up to Redding to meet her and basically get the paintings that she made for the book.
Wow.
So I messaged her, and I was even just saying that, hey, I know we just started messaging,
but by the way,
but I have to be in Redding anyway. Would you like to meet?
Yes.
And she said yes, and we had just our first date, and my dad came with me, not for the date.
Papa Joe was on the date.
Yeah, he did. He came to Redding because he wanted to meet the painter. Oh. And so while I went and had the date, he was doing his own thing. And then when it was over and I met up with him, he asked me, so how'd it go, son? And I said to him, Pops, I'm going to marry this girl. And then actually, 40 days later, I proposed to her.
First date.
Yeah, just 40 days. Yeah, pretty wild, the timing of that. But she had never been married, and was very much in this season of I want to get married, but you know what? I'm surrendering that to God, and I'm just going to trust His perfect will for my life, whether He leads a man in my life or not. So she knew exactly what she wanted, and thankfully I was it. But I talk about those things that are supernatural, almost like confirmations, like what happened when I went to New Zealand with Terry and the flag and the house for sale and all these weird things. Yeah. There were a number of things that happened like that with us. Like one thing that Sarah had shared with me I don't think she'd mind me sharing, but she had had this encounter. I think it was just a few years before we met, but she went on a missions trip, and there was a person there that was like a prophetic minister, right? So they give like supernatural prophetic words to people. Yeah. I know it was like a weird thing even amongst Christians, but they speak a different language. And they call. She has an audio recording of this, where they call Sarah up to her, and
is it tongues? Or?
No, not speaking in tongues. It's more like God basically like imparted something. For like, let's say like God gives me something to tell you, right?
Okay.
But he's telling, hey, I want you to go tell Rob here about this. Like, here's something I want him to know. So that's what happened with her. This woman who doesn't even speak English, but she has a translator. She's calling Sarah up, and she's saying like, hey, I feel like God gave me this vision of a present. She goes, is your favorite color yellow? I feel like God told me your favorite color is yellow. And Sarah's like, yeah, my favorite color is yellow. She's like, and I feel like God's just getting her attention.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, God gave me this picture of like a big yellow present. And the present is your future husband. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. I can't remember verbatim, but it was like basically saying like that when he comes into your life, he's going to be exiting like a season of brokenness.
Oh, okay.
And then when he comes into your life, he's going to be like, and I remember even the translator was like, I don't know what this means. When he comes into your life, he'll be a lamb. Well, again, what does Cordero mean?
Cordero, wow.
He'll be a lamb that comes into your life.
That is so much deeper.
And there was all these weird things that happened that we were like, okay, we can't dismiss that as coincidence, right? And so, yeah, literally 40 days after we met, I proposed to her.
Okay, so I had
we've been married for a little over 3 years now.
40 days.
Yeah.
Now, on the first date, did you happen to be wearing any yellow?
No,
that's what crossed my mind.
Actually, I wished I would have. No, but at that time it was weird. I was doing like a Steve Jobs type thing, and I literally just had jeans and like crimson red shirts in my closet, and they were all the exact same shirt too. That was all I wore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was running a business. I was a single dad. Just life was hectic, so even my wardrobe, I was like, I don't want to think about matching or what I have to wear. So all my outfits were the same. It was all just blue jeans and this crimson red shirt.
I've thought about that because
ridiculous.
Remember The Fly, the movie? Did you see the movie The Fly?
Yeah.
That's where I first saw that, and she was like, "Are you going to change?" She's like, "What do you mean? This is a fresh outfit."
Yeah.
And he showed her the closet.
All the same. That was literally me for a few years.
Well, no.
But then Sarah brought a lot of different color into my life. So.
She brought yellow.
Yeah, she brought some other color. Yeah.
So, where would you say you are currently at today, spiritually, with the business, with the family? Where are you today?
Today, oops, sorry.
Remscape we know is.
Yeah, Remscape's doing good. Yeah, I mean it's thriving. Spiritually, I'd like to see. I've been just so busy right now with things happening that I don't like how it's compromised my God time. So I feel closest to God when I'm just spending time with Him, and I think that's just like a child and their dad, right? I mean, you have that wholesome relationship when you're spending time together. And I think I have unfortunately I feel like not just the business, but we're expecting Sarah's pregnant.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. Yeah.
Dude, Jim? Can we do it?
Oh. So we're expecting.
Hey, we need a DJ
girl.
one too on that one. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I love that sound effect. We're expecting a baby girl, so Judah's going to be a big brother.
Judah, are you excited? He's excited.
We're moving too. Next month we're moving.
Wow, a lot of great changes.
There's a lot of great changes. It's just a lot. So I would love to see and I've been working on that even right now, just disciplining myself that, hey, God's got to come first. My days have got to start with Him. And I've even seen like when things are bombarding me with life, if I'm still having my God time, everything just hits me a lot less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then things just, even if, I always say this, that if you're really, I don't mean just a Christian, but if you're like making God a priority, either the storm around you gets calmed or the storm in your heart gets calmed. And you don't always get the storm around you calmed, right? I mean, my first wife still died, and I remember having a season where I hated God for that. And why didn't I get my miracle? And we trusted you. We listened to you. We were faithful to you. Where did you get this? But when I invited Him into my heart to, again, re-implementing that act of surrender, there was a peace that even though the Bible it says it surpasses all understanding. And that I can't account for. But I know when I invite Him into the process, no matter what the season's like, I have peace. So I'm working on like doing that again, because now it's just busyness. This is being a distraction, right? So it's nice being reacquainted with God, that even just in the sense that no matter how busy life can get, there's a stillness that just takes over. That He can help me hit pause, and I love it. So that's spiritually kind of what's going on.
I want to pause for a second because you said something that I think people who aren't not Christian and outside of this relationship with God would be surprised to hear you said, I was angry.
Oh, yeah.
And I think...
Sure, I hated God for a while.
see that?
Yeah.
When you hear that and you go, but Christian guy saying that he hated
Sure.
God, it's kind of jarring, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that transparency exists
Mm-hmm.
so that people who are maybe considering a relationship with Christ can realize you can be very human in that experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I'm in love and we have a great relationship all the time, that we have angry moments.
Yeah. I think the church, Christians especially, we need to be raw and real with the world. The world craves authenticity, and Christians do get mad and we get disappointed. My perception towards God changed when Judah was born, that I felt like I stopped thinking of God as like God the Father and started thinking of him as Father God, a father first. And I think as a father, I want Judah to come to me regardless of what's happening in his life, regardless of how he feels. Even if he's got a pound on my chest because he's angry. Dad, I'm angry because of how much this sucks and how unfair the world is. He can feel that and still be safe in my company. And I feel like that's exactly the perception of God towards his children. Be angry with me. Come before me pissed off. Just be with me. Just be with me. And I felt like, my journey with God in the healing, I was angry at him. And I remember the first time I heard him speak to me after that was, he said, return to the place of childlike trust. That was his, no justification or explaining why this happened. And I remember that made me more angry. Like, what do you mean trust you again? I did trust you. I lost everything. I've lost my business. I'm homeless. My wife died. I have a very sick infant now that he caught a cold once even, and he almost died. He stopped breathing. He had to be flown in a helicopter to Valley Children's Hospital. It's like, I've trusted you and I've lost everything. What's the point of trusting you? And honestly, what got me to the point of trusting him again? There wasn't some revelation or some vision I had that gave me that just, that made me run to him. I just saw that I was the worst version of myself without God. It was that simple. I was angry. I was bitter. I was giving into addictions in my life, and I just saw I was the absolute worst version of myself without God. And it came to this moment of just saying, okay, I can't do this on my own. Even though I feel like I'm not sure if I trust you. I have questions. I don't get why this happened. I realized I needed him so badly. And then there was this season where it was just a struggle, but day by day, trying to trust him again, and not feeling it, but choosing to trust him again, inviting him into the process and into the journey. And then I started feeling that peace I talked about again. Despite what happened, that peace just started taking over, the bitterness, all the things that I was trying to work on and trying to kick this little addiction. Like I struggled with an addiction of porn during that season. All those things that I was trying to fight on my own, they just kind of lost their interest. The bitterness just dissipated. The anger just faded. I just began to trust him again. There was that peace. And then I'll share this with you real quick. I had, when this was this was after the book was even done. I had, it says, this isn't in the book. I was in a time of worship. I'm just praising God. I'm kind of in that season where I'm trusting God again. All of a sudden, I've never had anything like this. I had the only thing I could call it was an out-of-body experience. Never had anything happen like it again. All of a sudden, I'm like, my eyes are closing while I'm worshiping God. I'm fine. I'm floating over the room, the hospital room where Allison died. I'm seeing myself. I'm seeing my dad, my mom, Allison's mom, Allison's sister. I'm seeing myself holding Allison's dead body. She died in my arms when she took her last breath. I'm seeing all this, and I'm thinking, like, this was the worst day of my life. And I'm seeing this, like, hovering from above it. And I'm like, what is happening? Why am I seeing this? Again, never had anything remotely happen like this, but this feels so real. I'm hearing the wails come from myself as Allison just died. And I asked God, why am I seeing this? And I didn't hear anything. And I keep watching, and all of a sudden, I see this man walk through one of the walls. And in almost instinctively, I know I'm looking at Jesus. I see him walk through the wall. He walks up to Allison's dead body. He grabs her hand, and he gives her, I'm going to try not to cry, and he gives her a tug. Her spirit jolts out of her body, and she throws her arms around his neck, and her skin is all restored. The color is back. She lost her hair from the treatment. Her hair is restored, and she throws her arms around his neck, and she's laughing. There's like this jubilation and this absolute joy. And as I take this in and I'm crying, then I feel like God told me, while you were having the worst day of your life, she was having the best day of hers. And that as believers, we have to sometimes trust when we don't see. We have to see things with heavenly eyes and know that even when we don't have answers, when we don't get an explanation or a miracle or what we wanted in that scenario, that God is still present and he's still good. It may just not have been what we wanted or what we hoped for, but he's still good. And that's been a vision I've clung to for a long time. When I hit those other, like my new wife, Sarah, now, we've had 3 miscarriages before we got to the baby that we're having now. Why did that happen? I don't know. Why do bad things happen? The Bible doesn't say. I don't know. And I would say, don't trust a Christian that does feel like that justifies God and defends him and has the answer to something that the Bible doesn't. You know what I mean? I don't know why bad things always happen, but I don't think that compromises God's goodness. I still think God and believe, and I know, because I've seen in my own life, that God is good and that he'll calm the storm around you or he'll calm the storm in your heart. That's what he does.
I'm so glad you shared that, because I'm thinking about Jim as you say that, because, you know, he just lost his mother, and the vision you hope for is that she's with the God that she worshiped her entire life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of made a little joke about it, that he said, you know, now she's rejoined with her husband. And what did you say, Jim?
Well, it's funny because she's 74. She sang and played for funerals in the past, and so the joke was there's probably more people that have passed that she's reuniting with and having
and she knew here.
joy. Yes, and there's more people in heaven than there are here on earth now for her to actually reminisce with and everything. And then there's my dad, who's like, "Oh, great, you're here. You know, you should have gave me more time." You know. So, but no, it's I could see that. I can see that, you know. So, because when she was on her deathbed, she was sleeping, you know, really hard, and we said our goodbyes, and
said our goodbyes. And to have that vision of walking with Jesus.
Yeah. When you have that relationship with Jesus, even death loses its sting. It does. It doesn't mean we don't hurt and we don't mourn. And Jim, sorry for your loss. I'm very sorry. It hurts, but I feel like we're the ones who hurt and mourn. You know what I mean? I feel like the Bible says that no eye has seen, no ear has heard the good that the Lord has prepared for those who love him. So I feel like we all get to step into the fullness of that when we die. And I can't imagine what Allison experienced and saw. And there's even some more things I shared in the book of just some things that were very, very incredible, that we knew God was involved in the journey. You know what I mean? And just even sometimes when we don't get that miracle, and we don't sometimes. Judah went through all kinds of miracles for him to still be here today.
There he is.
Yeah, here he is. I mean, he's this living, walking miracle. But I think it's also just as beautiful as a miracle that we have eternity with God. You know, I think it's just as beautiful. Yeah.
You know, I've been going through it lately. You know, I think a lot of us, for me, I think it's at the end of a school year. You kind of bottle a lot of emotions and set them aside. And now that the school year's over, you can kind of like explore those emotions, and they're not all positive, you know. So I've been going through a little bit lately and struggling, and I feel like we couldn't have had a more perfect guest for our first episode back.
Oh, good.
And exploring this idea. Yeah, thank you. Of loss and of joy and of faith and of what we call here ridiculous hope.
We need it in this life. You got to have ridiculous hope.
Ridiculous hope, guys. Josh Cordero in the RobLive Chances Are Production Studios. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, we're going to get some local copies of this. We're going to put it on Amazon. We'll have the link on our episode today. But on behalf of myself and the man that we could never do this without, our producer, Jim.
No problem, man. No problem. I'm back.
We're back. We dedicate this episode again to Allison Cordero and Cheryl Chance. Thank you. Thank you for being great examples of faith for all of us. Until next time, I haven't said this in a long time, but until next time, it's love, peace, and chicken grease. RobLive, we out.
Good stuff.
Boom.